Hi, and welcome yet to a new episode. I'm your host, Faith Elizabeth Nanyonga. In this new episode and new series, we're going to talk about graduate school. I've received a couple of questions about applying for graduate school, writing motivation letters, how to structure your PhD, how to get the most of your graduate experience, and the like. So in this first episode, I'm going to talk about whether or not you need a PhD and how to start applying for graduate school. We live in a very competitive world. A PhD can sometimes seem like it's an obligation or a requirement, especially if you work in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. However, if you feel you're under any pressure to do a PhD, I would advise you to sit down and do some self-evaluation. I learned this as a PhD student, especially that I was an international student, that the faster you sit down and evaluate the reasons as to why you want to do a PhD, the faster you'll be able to make a decision, and the faster you'll have clarity if you need to do a PhD or not do one. I learned this as an international student. You need to be ready to make some adjustment when it comes to leaving your home country or wherever you are to go and do your PhD somewhere else. And the faster you do this, the better you'll be prepared to do the PhD. Also, the other thing you need to understand that many people have very successful careers without PhDs to their name. So you doing a PhD is not going to come up with a magnificent solution to any world's problem. You're just contributing to knowledge. So if you understand these two things, you are able to decide whether you need a PhD or not a PhD. Some questions you ought to ask yourself are: why am I doing the PhD? What will I gain from pursuing a PhD? What else would I rather do than a PhD? Will I enjoy my time as a PhD student? Am I willing to do the same thing every single day of my PhD without getting tired or burnt out? How do I plan to use the PhD after I've acquired one? What contributions will a PhD make to my current career? The answers to these questions should only solely be based on you and you alone. You shouldn't do a PhD because your family is forcing you into doing one, because your peers are doing a PhD, or because you think it's prestigious to have a PhD at the end of the day. You shouldn't have any ulterior motives for doing a PhD other than your own personal development. So after you have determined the reasons as to why you want to do a PhD, the next thing is to figure out how to go about applying for a PhD. Figure out what topic you want to study, what university you want to do your PhD at, which continent you'd like to do your PhD, which supervisor would you like to supervise your PhD, and then the next thing is to start applying for the PhD. When it comes to applying for PhDs, there's not one size fits all. What I mean by this is that different universities and different places have different ways that PhD applications are done. Say in Australia, most of the PhDs, you apply when a supervisor is looking for PhD students, especially if you're in the science, technology, mathematics, engineering, which is STEM. While in people in arts, most times people find the supervisor and you write to the supervisor and you ask them if they're willing to take you on as a PhD student. So if that's the case, what you have to do is you have to at least have an idea of what topic you want to research and whether the topic you want to research fits into that supervisor's expertise or interests. So the first thing I'm going to discuss is how to apply for a PhD if you are in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine, and you're applying, let's say, in Australia. From my understanding, Australia and the UK have a similar PhD application system, especially if you're in STEM. So in STEM, in the STEM part of it, usually supervisors every year put out for grants, which is funding, to do their research. So during that period of application for grants, they get the grants, and when they get the grants, they look out for students who can be able to do the PhD in their labs or in their settings. What I mean by this is that the PhDs are advertised most of the times, and that's how I got my PhD. If you listen to the previous episode that I did, I talked about how I applied for my PhD. I googled PhD in virology in Australia. Then I found the PhD that I saw, and I felt like it was in line with what I wanted to do. So I wrote to the supervisor. It was basically like a job advert, and I responded to it as you would apply for a job. A friend of mine who is in another university here in Australia, she told me she had to write a concept paper, which is like a proposal. And she expressed her interest in doing that type of research with the supervisor she had chosen. She sent it to the supervisor, and the supervisor gave her a PhD. Because she's in public health, that's how she had to go about her application and finding a suitable PhD for herself. So for the arts or public health and social work kind of system, you usually have to find yourself a supervisor who is willing to take you on with your concept, your idea, and it's on that idea that you usually build your PhD. So this supervisor seconds you to the university and says, I found a right student to do the PhD with me, and the topic she'll be working on will be this. So when they second you to the graduate school offers you the admission and again gives you the scholarship, because most of the PhDs here in Australia are government funded through universities. So that's how they go about getting their own PhDs. When the supervisor feels you're a right fit, will be like, oh, can I see a proposal or a concept paper? How are you planning to do this research? So you provide your details. And when you do that, he or she gets back to you and is like, you know what? This feels right, and I'm ready to take you another PhD student. So they help you process the PhD application by giving their voice and their word to the university to tell them like, oh, I found a suitable student who could be able to do a PhD, and it's going to increase our research in such and such a way. And in that being done, they help you find the scholarship by seconding you to graduate school to fund your project. So I'll give you my tips when it comes to applying for graduate school. First and foremost, do your homework. Before choosing a PhD or faculty, do your research. This can be very stressful, but try as much as possible to find out every information that you would need. Look at what university you would like to do your PhD at, what topic, what school, what continent. If it's a school, look at the researchers in that school. Are there researchers in the same field that you'd like to contact? Let's say you want to do your research in social work and social administration, but you find there are 3 professors in social work and social administration. So read about their bibliography, find out their research, look at what PhD students they've had in the past, because all that information is usually on university website. Look at the PhD students that they've had in the past. Have they supervised PhD students? How many have completed the PhDs? All that information is very important when it comes to choosing your supervisor. So do your research to the nitty-gritties. Find out everything that you need to know about that supervisor. What's their supervision style? Are they people-friendly? Do they have a proactive approach? Are they keen to listen? All that is important, because when you do a PhD, there's lots of things that you need to do. You need to find a person who is compatible with your style of learning and also compatible in terms of working. How do you like to work? Do you like to be supervised every other day? Like you have to provide feedback to the supervisor every other day? Or do you like to be given a task, then they check on you to just check and see if you finish that task? So this research is very important. Do not just find any supervisor and you see, oh, this one is doing the project that I want and I want to take up a PhD with them. Your research is very important, and it will help you along the way to find out that this is the right supervisor that I need and this is the right university that I need. How would you do your research? I've talked about the websites. school website, find out what they do, what their interests are, previous students they've supervised, how many publications they've done, are they experts in their field that you want to do your PhD in. Ask if you could find PhD students that have been supervised with them in the past. Could you ask them an honest opinion about that supervisor? Did those students enjoy their time being under that person's supervision? All that helps you make a proper judgment on choosing which supervisor to have when you're doing your PhD. So that also ties into choosing your supervisor wisely. 5 tips in choosing your supervisors wisely. One of them, look at their research expertise. Does it fit your research interests? Look up their supervision experience. How many students have they supervised in the past? Ask for student opinion and remarks. Ask for past students' opinion and remark. This might be hard, but you could find out their previous students from their website when you see someone's project, because usually on website they put, oh, he supervised a PhD about this kind of topic. So check out for PhD students who are supervised under that supervisor through LinkedIn or the university websites. Also, research into their personality and find out whether you two are compatible to work together, because as much as you're going to be a student, you're going to be working in close contact with your PhD supervisor. So after you've done that, you've done your research, you've researched about your supervisor, the next thing you have to do is to make your personal statement and resumes ready. Making personal statement is very important when it comes to PhD. Other places they refer to them as motivation letters. And it's very important for you to structure your motivation letter to be in line with what that supervisor is doing. That's how you get the PhD. In the coming episodes, I'll talk in depth about how you could look at designing your motivation letter or your expression of interest. So we shall discuss that in detail because it's kind of a long topic. I can't discuss all of it in this episode, otherwise it will be quite so long. So most PhDs are not cheap. A year you could spend up to $120,000 if you're a PhD student, especially if you're in STEM. So are you going to apply for scholarship? You need to have all this information, and you also need to prepare yourself to apply for scholarships. As I've mentioned, if you have a supervisor willing to take you on as a PhD student, they usually help in this aspect of looking for scholarship. They will guide you how that particular university goes about offering scholarship to PhD student. But if that's not the case and you need to secure your own funding, there are also different avenues that you would consider when looking for scholarships. Some of the websites that I've known in the past are the PhD Forum, Scholarship Position, or Advanced Scholarships. Or most of the times I tell people, they ask me, how did you do this? I tell them, use Google. Google usually has everything, so you could just Google PhD scholarships in the UK, PhD scholarships in Europe, PhD scholarships in Australia, PhD scholarships in sciences. Let's say if you're looking at virology like me, or PhD scholarships in immunology. All this information is usually out there, and it's based on you to find it out. So if you're going to have a PhD scholarship application, also have your motivation ready, because most times supervisors have to look at what you have to offer. All this I'll discuss in the coming episode. So those are my points when it comes to securing a PhD. Those are my tips and tricks when it comes to securing a PhD. First and foremost, do your research. Find out as much information as you need before you do your application. Secondly, first and foremost, do your research and find out as much information as you need to apply for your PhD. Which university, which topic, which supervisor, which country, how long the PhD will be, how will you be supervised, all that I've talked about. Secondly, choose your supervisor wisely. By choosing your supervisor wisely, you help yourself in preventing any problems that might arise along your PhD journey. Choose your PhD supervisor wisely. Look at their bibliography, look at their research experience, their supervision experience, past students' remarks and opinions about the supervisor, and also their personality. The third one you have to do is to have your PhD resume and personal statement or motivation letters ready to go out. Tailor each PhD that you're applying for. Some people are lucky that you apply for only one PhD and you get it. Other people, you have to keep on sending out application. So tailor your PhD resume and your PhD application to that project that you're applying for or to that supervisor's expertise. I've found that to be the most useful thing when it comes to applying for PhD. You don't want to have your resume that you did 10 years ago or you did 4 weeks ago about cancer and now you're applying for virus research and you're giving that, or you did it and you're applying for PhD, let's say in mining, but now you've changed your mind because you also have electric engineering experience. You give that same personal statement. No. Tailor your resume and personal statement to the PhD that you're applying for. This will show you as a more serious person. Your personal statement is your selling document to your supervisor. It's what your supervisor is going to use to create a first impression of who you are. So you didn't want to put out a bad piece to your supervisor because first impressions last forever. So save yourself the burden of embarrassment or not getting, or wasting your time not getting. Because if a person reads your statement and they're like, oh, this person is applying to me, I'm skilled in mining, and they're applying and telling me about electrical engineering things, they don't connect. So tailor your personal statement and resume to fit the PhD that you're applying for. In the next coming episode, we shall talk about how to tailor your personal statements, motivation letter, and cover letters to apply for the PhD. I hope this episode has been useful to those applying for PhD. And if you're looking out for a PhD, I'll put some information in the description of this podcast. You could look at the different websites that I'll suggest for you to look at when you're looking for PhD scholarships around the entire world. And I wish you good luck in your pursuit of a PhD scholarship and a PhD placing. If you have any other topics that you want me to discuss, please feel free to send me an email. The email address is theframesolution@gmail.com. Also follow me on Instagram at theframesolutions. And also share this episode with friends who are looking for PhDs, who need some guidance when it comes to applying for PhDs and doing PhDs in general. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope you picked a point from this episode. And I can't wait to speak to you in the next coming episode. Have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're at. And pursue your dream. Remember that personal development is a personal thing. It's you to develop your own career. No one else is going to do it for you. So go out there. If it's a PhD that you're after, go out there, put in your applications. And if you need any help, I'm here to help you. I can't wait to speak to you in the next episode. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.